Greetings to everyone. I am Brian, creator of the YouTube and Facebook page Brian Speaks On channels and patriarch of Team Awesome. Let's get right into it, shall we? Was trying to get into some topics to talk about recently, and of course things always come up. 2016 has been a ruthless year for losing people, people crossing over to the other side, whatever your belief system holds to that, to that thing. And last week was no different. As a matter of fact, last week was different in the sense of symbolism, and we have lost the greatest of all time in various realms of discussion, that being the great Muhammad Ali. One of the few people in modern day history, at least, who you can, without the bat of an eye, admit is somebody who is a global, international person of regard, and who symbolizes so many things in terms of strength, black strength, brashness, boldness, unabashedness, not being unapologetic for who one is, confidence, civil rights activists, someone who fought for human rights, someone who fought as a career, a man who was a fighter in all stages of understanding, has finally fought his last fight. And for so many people, Mr. Ali represents so many things. He was such a complex person. And of course, I don't need to play amateur historian to everybody when it comes to Ali. My purpose with Brian Speaks On, as most people know who follow, but for those who don't, I use a specific topic to springboard into a much broader topic. And the great Ali is the perfect example of a springboard topic for me, in that I want to talk about a particular perspective about Ali that seems to be the popular discussion topic over the past few days. Something that it's really confused me, actually, but it also sheds light when it comes to people's logic. There was a quote, to paraphrase Malcolm X, that I read, to where he said, you cannot be so patriotic that you are blinded into not accepting what is right from what is wrong. And these speaking points over the past few days, over the radio in particular, have kind of brought that phrase to light, because one of the most talked about aspects of Muhammad Ali over the past few days from people is this running issue of discomfort about Ali skipping out on the war in Vietnam. Now again, I shouldn't even say it like that, because he didn't skip out on the war in Vietnam. Excuse me. I correct myself on that. Black people understand what Muhammad Ali did when he stood up and stood against the war in Vietnam. And not just black people, but again, him being black and representing, a particular kind of black struggle in that era. Those people understood exactly what the deal was. A lot of people didn't in that era. And on some level, I can understand that, because people are programmed to think a certain way by society, by government, by the ruling faction at the time. So of course, if you were avoiding the war, because back then you were drafted, wasn't a choice per se. It was either you go to war or you go to jail. So if you chose jail over serving your country, you were labeled as, some form of traitor, or treasonous, against your country. Now, of course, black people have a particular kind of philosophy as it applies to that, and I'll get into that in a couple of seconds. But the thing that confused me was, we're not talking about that time anymore of the Vietnam era. We're talking about people in 2016. And, the phrase hindsight is 2020 should apply when it comes to that aspect of his life. That's the thing that confused me. Because you could walk around and ask 100 people who are familiar with the Vietnam War, about it, and ask, well, what are your thoughts about the Vietnam War? I would very much bet that damn near everybody you ask wouldn't say that the Vietnam War was the right thing to do. Like, it was a good war and we fought that war for a noble cause, and you're not going to hear people say that the war was something worth fighting. So, with that basic understanding, why are people still upset that Ali did what turned out to be the correct thing to do? He did what most people should have done as it applied to that specific war. He was ahead of his time in his understanding that that war was not for any noble cause. And he turned out to be correct. So, are people so patriotically blind that they will overlook the actual understanding that he did the right thing and hold on to that patriotic, dogma of feeling that he somehow was treasonous against his country? I don't understand that. And it leads me into a broader topic as it applies to black people and patriotism, United States patriotism, American patriotism. It seems like we are looked upon as being held to the same level of expectation as it applies to being a patriot in this country. You are expected to feel the same patriotism when people start singing the Star Spangled Banner and God Bless America. If you're black, you're supposed to, you are obligated to feel that same swell of pride in your chest for this country. When you look at the Olympic Games and you see, an American win a medal and you hear the anthem, it's almost as if people truly do not have the ability to see outside of themselves, to see outside of their own perspective, to see outside of things based on other people's experience in something. And again, on a certain level, I can understand that. It's hard to understand another person's story when that story is so counter to what you have experienced, but you cannot act like you don't know that black people have been put through the biggest hell as it applies to being an American than practically anybody else besides the First Nation people. So how is it that you can, on one hand, logically understand that fact about black people in America due to the history that of black people experiencing what we have experienced, because America has by no means been patriotic towards black people. You can get into semantics and talk about what was rights that have been eventually given to us and things that we have overcome, but to even acknowledge that is to acknowledge that the oppression existed in the first place. So what little things that we have gotten, and again, mind you, the only thing that we have gotten in a lot of senses is the ability to live on a normal level. we weren't given anything that granted us some kind of privileges above anyone else. People were given privileges to just be considered equal, normal. So it's basically the standpoint of, okay, we're going to allow you to have what we just considered basic stuff. Like, that's like saying, we'll allow you to eat cooked food now. We'll allow you to eat food that's been refrigerated. After all these years of just eating raw meat. Like we've been eating like civilized people all this time. We're gonna let you eat at the dinner table now too. Why not? And these things weren't procured to us benevolently. These things didn't happen as acts of benevolence and people being magnanimous and seeing people for their humanity. But again, that's another discussion for another day. I'm going back to this whole people's inability to understand another person's existence. Because, our perspectives are derived and cultivated and molded based on our experiences. And I, as well as many other black people, can understand that about people who are not black. We understand that your opinion, your viewpoint of things, your patriotism is created based on what this country has done for you. And of course, when you're a white person living in a white society, country's been doing pretty good for you, so you have a very good reason to be patriotic. But how can you sit there and hold people who have been on the opposite side of that to the same obligation to feel some form of patriotism and loyalty and just blind love for an oppressive regime towards it? You want people to like, it's almost like you expect people to be into some kind of masochistic, Stockholm syndrome type of delusion. You want us to be like, hey, no matter what you've done to us and continue to do us currently, I just love America, boy. I love me some America. You can't tell me nothing bad about America, boy. I will raise my right hand and swear upon its Bible and, all this other stuff. Blindly and, with no regard to the oppression and humiliation that my people have suffered here from the very beginning. And again, currently as we speak, because some things just evolve. Some things don't go away. They just evolve. They turn into other things. They evolve into other things, just like children evolve into adults. So, again, I would like to hear from people who are staunch patriots of this country. What do you expect from people who have not experienced the same love from its country towards them? Do you truly feel like they should feel some kind of blind obligation to have this extreme loyalty to this country? And if you do choose to respond, I would prefer not to hear, comparisons to other areas of the world. Because that's one of the things that I see a lot. I see people saying, well, for all that, you could be living somewhere in the Middle East where you can't even say nothing without getting your hand cut off or whatever. But we don't live there. We live here. Talk about your house. Don't talk about somebody else's house as a comparison, as some kind of juxtaposition as to how bad you could have had it. Because that is another slippery slope for you to even try to do in the first place. Because had the events not happened the way that they happened, who's to say what could have been going on in those regions at this current time? If there was no transatlantic slave trade and Africa was dominated and run and completely run by African people, and everybody was still indigenous to Africa who are now here in America, and so on and so forth. That's a whole lot of semantics to argue over, and I personally don't have the time or the ambition to get into hypotheticals like that. So I want to talk about this country, this issue specific. Why do you feel like we should be patriots? Non-white people who are brought here by force, people who have just started reaping any kind of, and I'm not going to call it benefit, because it's not a benefit to be treated on an equal plane as everybody else. It's just being afforded the ability to be normal. So why do you have, if you have these expectations, why do you have these expectations? Give me some reason to feel like I should have this blind patriotism for this country, and people of my background and experience and so on, and ancestry and so on and so forth. Why should we feel like we are dutiful to this country like that? And that's pretty much the question. That's more or less the thesis statement that I wanted to make in regards to this situation. Once again, rest in peace, Mr. Ali. You have done more for humankind than I think so many people will come to remember. I hope that I'm wrong on that, because you spoke up for us. You gave us a symbol when we needed one, in a time where our people were still being put in a particular scope of stereotype. You broke that stereotype. You showed this world what it looks like to be a strong man who fought for his dignity, who fought for the ability to be his own man and be black and be proud of who you were. So much so that you told everybody you will be who you decided to be, not what they decided to be. And I thank you for that. Rest in peace to a great man, man. I mean, you shouldn't have to be black to understand and appreciate something like that, someone like that. And yeah, man, like, it's just such a crazy thing to have to speak about someone in memoriam now. But we were all blessed by his presence here. We were all blessed. We were all blessed by his existing and his courage. He did more for everybody than I think people who weren't of his background can understand. Maybe one day we'll be able to talk about it in a much more, in a much better light. But right now, I'll just remember what he did for us. And I thank you all for watching. I hope to get some responses to this, get some dialogue going, because that's really what it's all about. It's not about putting people in certain boxes of villainy and things like that. It is about talking about things in a truthful manner, in an honest and open manner, and with candor and with respect. So for those who do choose to respond, please respond respectfully, and let's get some dialogue going. I'm just trying to give a different perspective, while at the same time being open to receive a different perspective as well. And with that, I wish us all well. Bless up to everybody out there. Bless up to the Ali family. Thank you for watching. 1.